skipping the family beach trip this year because my sister thinks I'm her personal babysitter. At 23, I've had enough of being stuck as the default helper for my sister's 3 boys. It got so bad I eventually moved out of my parents' house to escape always being roped into babysitting duty. Last summer, we all went on a family vacation to the coast. My parents covered my hotel room, but the catch was I had to share it with my nephews while my sister and her husband got their own space. I was promised I'd have free time to enjoy myself, but instead, I spent most of the trip wrangling kids. When I complained, everyone brushed me off, saying I shouldn't be upset since I wasn't paying for the trip. I only got to do one thing for myself, a quick visit to an art gallery I love by the beach. Even then, the boys were miserable and kept whining about how boring it was. This year, my parents are planning another beach trip in June, and they assumed I'd just tag along like last time. But I've decided to do things differently. I told them I'll drive myself and pay for my own room. My parents were shocked and kept reminding me how expensive that would be, but I assured them I could handle it. I've got a stable job, and my car runs just fine. That's when the drama started. I explained how last year's trip felt more like unpaid babysitting than a vacation and that this time, I want to enjoy myself as an adult. My sister caught wind of it and lost her mind, calling to tell me I'd ruin the trip if I wasn't there to help with her kids. She said it wasn't fair for her to handle them on her own. I told her off, reminding her how last year she dumped all her responsibilities on me and made me feel like the bad guy for wanting a little time to myself. I deserve a vacation too. I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm not willing to let myself be treated like one. Now my sister isn't speaking to me, and my parents are begging me to ride with them to keep the peace. But I'm holding firm, even though the guilt trips are starting to wear me down. Am I the bad guy here? I know it'll be harder for them without me, but I just can't give in. Edit. Less than an hour after posting, my sister somehow found this post. She's furious, both at me and at everyone in the comments for not siding with her. She launched into a tirade about how tough it is raising triplets and how, as a young, single guy, I should be more willing to help her get a break. I stood my ground and told her my decision is final. Now she's running to our parents to escalate things. I'm expecting a call any minute. Now that I'm off work, here's how it played out. My sister roped my parents in, and they ended up reading this post. They're angry at me for airing our family drama online, but I told them this wouldn't have happened if they'd listened to me in the first place. I'm done being the peacekeeper, especially when it always comes at my expense. Keep it brief. My parents blew up at my sister after hearing what she said, and now the entire vacation is off. Turns out, they hadn't even booked the hotel yet, but everyone's at each other's throats. My parents are furious with my sister, she's blaming me, and now my nephews are heartbroken because they're not going to the beach. During lunch, my sister called me again, essentially suggesting that I have no life and, therefore, should be available to help her out. I decided to record that conversation and shared it with my parents, which has now become the focal point of their latest argument. I wasn't planning to add more, but here's what's happening now. My parents have promised they'll never push me into babysitting my nephews again, admitting that what happened last year wasn't fair. They're livid with my sister for telling me I should help just because she thinks I have nothing better to do. Meanwhile, my sister is playing the victim, and my brother-in-law is avoiding the drama entirely, burying himself in work. To everyone who commented earlier, thank you for your support. You've truly made my day, and my parents have apologized for their part in all of this, though my sister hasn't, at least not yet. When I posted last week asking if I was the jerk, I didn't expect my story to blow up like it did. A friend suggested I update here since I have too much to say for an AITA post. Here's the backstory. My parents and older sister had gotten used to me helping out with her triplet boys. I stayed at home until I was 22, trying to save money while attending college. Thanks to a scholarship, most of my tuition was covered, and living with my parents kept me from drowning in debt while working part-time. For that, I'm really grateful. But after I graduated, everyone just assumed I had endless free time. They talked me into joining a family vacation under the guise of relaxing and bonding, but it turned out to be anything but relaxing for me. I got stuck babysitting my sister's then 6-year-old boys for the entire trip. To make matters worse, I had to share a hotel room with them, which was an absolute nightmare. The kids refused to listen to me that first night until I called their mom, twice. And instead of backing me up, I got treated like the bad guy for wanting to do anything for myself during the trip. Apparently, when it comes to family activities, the rule is that everyone has to enjoy it, or it doesn't happen. Funny how that didn't seem to include me, even though I'm part of the family too. After my last post, I decided to confront my parents about the whole babysitting situation, and to their credit, they admitted they were in the wrong. That disastrous vacation last year was the final straw for me, and I ended up moving out before the summer was over. I didn't give anyone a heads up, which left them all pretty shocked. Thankfully, I had landed a great job right after college thanks to an internship, and I used the move as an opportunity to cut my commute from 45 minutes down to just 15. Of course, my sister was the one most upset by my decision. With me gone, her free weekend babysitter was no longer available. Not that it stopped her from trying to guilt me into helping anyway. I'll admit, I caved a few times when she bribed me with pizza, and that became a sort of new normal. But last month, when my parents announced plans for another family vacation to the same coastal spot, I could immediately see where things were headed. It was a trap. I knew that if I went along with their plan, riding with them and letting them cover the hotel rooms, I'd end up in the exact same situation as before, stuck babysitting. So I made it clear from the start, I'd drive myself and cover my own expenses. That's when the drama began. Once my parents realized I wasn't falling for the same setup, they switched to borderline begging. My sister, on the other hand, went full throttle, trying to manipulate me into going with the flow. Spoiler alert, I didn't. When she refused to back off, I decided to make that AITA post after days of constant harassment. Somehow, my sister stumbled across it within an hour of me posting. From there, all hell broke loose. First, the whole family turned against me. My sister called my parents, and they rang me up while they were reading my post in real time. I asked them point blank if anything I'd written was untrue. Instead of answering directly, they danced around it and claimed I'd exaggerated. So, I calmly walked them through every detail, showing them how accurate it was. Then, I told them to take a look at the comments. The sheer volume of responses was overwhelming. I kept refreshing the page on my computer and giving them updated numbers. It was clear this had struck a chord with a lot of people. I also told my parents I was sick of their keep the peace approach, which always seemed to come at my expense to appease my sister. Before we could dive any deeper, I had to cut the call short, saying I didn't have time to argue further at the moment. Later, when I informed my parents that the number of comments had doubled and was still climbing, they seemed genuinely shaken. I think it forced them to take a hard look at their behavior. Meanwhile, my sister blew up my phone with calls and messages while I was at work. I didn't respond until my lunch break, but when I did, her frustration was palpable. She told me my post had turned our parents against her, and now they were mad at her instead of supporting her. Apparently, the resulting argument between them led to the entire vacation being canceled. Eventually, my parents admitted they tried to shift the blame onto me out of embarrassment, but they fully accepted that they were at fault. They owned up to the fact that they had been treating me as their go-to free babysitter, even after I'd moved out. They did try to justify themselves a bit by pointing out that I hadn't paid rent while living at home during college. But I reminded them that I didn't ask to be born, and I was working hard to make my own way. On top of that, I pointed out that my dad got the same advantage from his parents, living rent-free while he was in school. That pretty much ended any arguments they had left. When my sister called me during lunch, I laid out the facts, and that's when her true colors really showed. She flat out implied that I don't have a life and that my weekends should be spent helping her out because she's tired and can't go anywhere without dragging her kids along unless someone's there to babysit. Keep in mind, she's a stay-at-home mom. Her husband has a solid job with a good salary, and they own their house outright. Meanwhile, my nephews aren't my responsibility, but they treated me like I was obligated to help just because it was convenient for them. Frustrated, she hung up on me, but luckily, I had recorded the call. Later, I played it for my parents, who were absolutely furious. They confronted her, and things escalated quickly. My sister doubled down, insisting my life should revolve around hers, which I called out as the most narcissistic and entitled thing she'd ever said about me. It took days of back and forth, but her husband finally stepped in and made her apologize. Honestly, I'd never seen her so humbled. She was on the verge of tears. During her half-hearted apology, it came out that one of the reasons I was their go-to babysitter wasn't because of money, but because she didn't trust strangers with her kids. Or at least that's what she claimed. But here's the kicker. Her husband thought she was paying me for all those times I babysat after moving out. In reality, all she ever gave me was enough money to cover pizza for me and the kids, with maybe a tiny bit left over. She never even offered gas money. When he found out she'd been shortchanging me for months, he blew up at her. She ended up having to pay me what she owed entirely out of her own savings, and let's just say she wasn't happy about it. Her husband also apologized to me for not stepping in sooner and promised they'd hire an actual babysitter from now on. Sure, it'll cost them a bit, but at least my sister will get her date nights back without relying on me. Then came the big family meeting. A couple of nights ago, we all gathered at my parents' house, and everything was finally laid out in the open. Apologies were exchanged, and everyone seemed to agree to move forward. My parents reinstated the family vacation, but I made it crystal clear I'd still be driving myself and paying for my own hotel room. I even warned them that if my sister tries to turn me into a babysitter again, I'll stay at a completely different hotel. She promised me it wouldn't happen, so that's where things stand. If I don't post an update after the vacation in about a month, you can assume everything went smoothly. My sister called me yesterday, absolutely fuming and demanding I take down my posts. Apparently, she's even more upset now that she knows just how far they've spread. Having family members who know about your Reddit account has its downsides, that's for sure. She called right after I got off work, asking if people were still commenting. She admitted she couldn't bring herself to look because all the comments were so harsh and hurtful toward her. So, I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her the truth. At least 10 comments are still coming in daily, and most of them echo the same criticism about her behavior. That's when she broke down crying and begged me to delete the posts. I refused. I told her she could cry to whoever she wanted, but those posts are staying up. They're my insurance that she won't treat me like garbage again. After all, let's not forget, she acted like my life should revolve around hers, didn't pay me the babysitting money she owed me, pocketed it instead, and forced me to be her full-time babysitter on last year's so-called vacation. Honestly, is it any wonder that people are criticizing her when she treated me like that? Then, I dropped another bomb. The posts have already made their way onto other websites. A few people have even asked me for permission to write articles about my situation, and there are videos discussing it too. When she heard that, she shrieked so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear, then hung up on me. Not long after, my parents called, practically begging me to take the posts down. I refused again, reminding them this only happened because they never stood up for me. None of this would have gone public if they'd just told my sister to treat me like an equal instead of her personal servant. I'm not her butler, babysitter, or handyman. I'm her brother, and I'm a grown-ass adult. If they were in my shoes, wouldn't they be sick of this too? They reluctantly admitted I had a point but kept pleading for me to take the posts down. I stood my ground and even warned them that if they didn't start standing up for me when my sister came crying to them, I'd keep posting. I told them they've been enabling her for far too long, and it's time she started cleaning up her own messes. At the end of the day, I reminded them I didn't father those kids. I have my own life to focus on, a career I'm still new to, and a future I'm working hard to build. In fact, there's even someone I want to ask out soon. My life is moving forward, and I won't let it be derailed by my sister's nonsense. They can either support that or keep enabling her, but I warn them the latter won't end well for anyone. The only way my Reddit post will stop is if the drama stops. I've kept everything anonymous, and I have every right to vent my frustrations, which, frankly, are very valid. When I told this to my parents, it left my mom in tears and my dad completely silent. I didn't back down. I told them that tears don't sway me, and they know exactly what needs to happen to end this. They have to stop enabling my sister. Later, my sister called me again. This time, it was to yell at me because our parents told her they were done getting involved and that she needed to figure it out herself. Oh, and they told her she should start being nicer to me. I couldn't help but picture her face twitching as she tried to process that. Be nice to my little brother? What even is that? Should I Google it? Yeah, I got pretty sarcastic with her, and I'm not even sorry about it. By the end of the call, she was crying, and I hung up. A little while later, my brother-in-law called me. He wasn't happy either, saying I'd upset his wife by still posting about all this. I explained everything to him, every single detail, and he finally said he'd have another talk with her. At this point, I'm really hoping the drama stops here. The family vacation is still happening in late June, and I've already booked my room and requested the day off from work so we can leave on a Friday. But here's the kicker. My room isn't just separate from the others. It's not even on the same floor as the ones my parents, sister, brother-in-law, and nephews will be using. When we get to the coast, my plan is simple. If something isn't a family activity, I'll do what I want. I'm going to tour those art galleries I love, indulge in all the amazing local food, and, most importantly, enjoy some carefree time for myself. This time, it's going to be a real vacation. The family vacation has come and gone, and while some things went as expected, there were both positives and negatives. On the bright side, my parents didn't cave to my sister's attempts to make me babysit. But, unsurprisingly, the bad part was that my sister still tried to manipulate the situation. This time, by attempting to find out which room I was staying in. That plan backfired and got her into trouble with her husband again. To ensure things went smoothly, I contacted the hotel ahead of time and instructed them not to give out any information about my stay to anyone, except in the case of a serious situation involving law enforcement. The hotel staff assured me over the phone that no one would get my details. On the morning of the trip, I also took matters into my own hands and left at 9 a.m., knowing full well that my family wouldn't be able to get moving as a group until at least 10 a.m. check-in wasn't until 1 p.m. But I wanted a head start and sent out a quick group text letting everyone know. My parents weren't thrilled about this because they'd apparently planned a family brunch along the way, something I was never informed about. Since I'd already left, they scrapped the brunch in favor of fast food, which is what I'd planned on anyway. I got to the hotel before check-in. So I stopped by the front desk to confirm that no one, especially my family, could get any information about my room. The staff reassured me that it was their policy not to share guest information, but I made it clear I didn't want to take any chances. Knowing my mom, sister, and her trio of kids, I could picture them pulling the guilt card to get details from the staff. The front desk team promised to stick to their rules and notify me if anyone asked about my room. With that settled, I went out to grab lunch and returned over an hour later to find that my parents and my brother-in-law had arrived in their cars. I waited until the coast was clear in the lobby, then approached the desk to check in. As I suspected, my family had already tried to ask about my room, but the staff refused to give them any information. My sister had apparently pushed harder, but her husband stepped in and told her to let it go. Once I was in my room, I called my parents to let them know I'd arrived. I didn't mention that I knew about their failed attempt to find out where I was staying, and conveniently, they didn't bring it up either. Later, we all met up as a family to go sightseeing at one point during the outing. My sister tried to pull her usual stunt by asking me to watch the kids for just a moment. I immediately shut that down with a firm, hell no. I've seen this trick before. She says it'll just be a moment and then conveniently vanishes for over an hour. I called her out on it right there, and her husband backed me up, telling her to quit trying to offload the kids onto me. So, what did my sister do next? She burst into tears right there, wailing about how she needs a break. Her husband wasn't having it and told her he was tired too, but wasn't making a fuss about it. My mom shot me a nasty look, which was the last straw. I walked right up to her and said, point blank, that if she even thought about asking me to watch those kids, I'd leave the family vacation right then and there. I told her I was done with her and my sister treating me like a built-in babysitter. It's not my job. That was enough to make my mom start crying too. She kept repeating, "You're right," over and over again in a way that was clearly meant to make me feel guilty. This is one of her old tricks, trying to look pitiful to get me to back down. I just looked at her and said, "Yeah, I am right. Let it go," before walking away. After that, neither my mom nor my sister tried anything else for the rest of the day. When we returned to the hotel after dinner, my family all crowded into the elevator, but I didn't join them. When they asked why, I casually said I'd wait for the next one. My sister gave me a death glare because she knew exactly what I was doing. I ended up sitting in the lobby for about 15 minutes, watching YouTube on my phone, before finally heading up. My room was on a different floor and at the opposite end of the hotel, so I had a peaceful, undisturbed night. The next morning, we all went out for breakfast, but I made sure they left first. Just like the night before, I was the last one to leave and the last one to join them. Breakfast went fine, and I let them know I'd join them for a couple of planned family activities, like the aquarium, but the rest of the day was mine to spend as I pleased. They accepted that, and the day went smoothly. That evening, back at the hotel, my sister caught me leaving my room. It became clear she'd been stalking the floor trying to find me. I'd gone to my room earlier to rest for a bit before dinner, but as soon as I stepped out, there she was, waiting down the hall. She tried to corner me, complaining that I'd ruined the family vacation for her. She claimed it wasn't much different from being at home since she still had to deal with her kids. I called her out right there, saying that was nonsense because our parents had been helping her a lot. I told her I was done with this never-ending cycle of being her scapegoat. I said it was over, and she needed to leave me alone and focus on her own life. Then I walked away while she yelled after me, "Hey, I'm trying to talk to you." Without missing a beat, I told her I didn't care and was going to dinner. She followed me to the elevator, but we didn't exchange another word after that. At dinner, I didn't keep quiet. I told my parents and brother-in-law that my sister had been creeping around to find my room. They treated her like a misbehaving child, scolding her on the spot, while she sulked and threw herself a pity party. I told her to stop playing the victim and grow up because the days of her bossing me around were done. Then I left the table and headed out to my car, making sure I was the first one to dinner this time. When everyone else arrived, my sister looked utterly defeated, but no one brought up what had happened earlier, which was just fine with me. She didn't try to interact with me for the rest of the evening, and I made it clear to everyone that unless there was a genuine emergency, no one was to come knocking on my door. I had a "do not disturb" sign for a reason. The last day of the vacation went off without a hitch. Neither my sister nor my mom tried to bother me. They had completely given up at this point. And yes, just to clarify, I did spend some time playing with my nephews. I'm not heartless. I kept up my role as the fun uncle, but not the overburdened, babysitter uncle. The boys didn't seem to care about the difference. They just wanted to have fun. I even bought them each a small souvenir, a little baggie of crystals and polished stones, to take home. There was a minor spat between my sister and her husband, but it was nothing significant, just little disagreements I didn't bother to involve myself in. Overall, I'd call the vacation a win. It finally seemed to sink in for my mom and sister that the old dynamics, where they relied on me as their go-to helper, were over. I have my own life now, and they'll just have to accept it. Well, my mom and sister saw my last post. They really don't know when to quit. "Hey mom, hey sis, remember when I warned you that if you didn't leave me alone, I'd be back on Reddit? Surprise, here I am. Here's the short version. My sister was stalking my account for days, knowing I'd probably post again. When she saw my last update, she freaked out. What did she expect? That I'd just say everything was sunshine and rainbows? She called me in tears, upset that I'd made her look like a bad mom. I couldn't resist replying, "Well, if the glass slipper fits." That didn't go over well. She kept arguing, but I asked her to name one thing in the post that was untrue. She tried, but every detail I'd shared was spot on, and she knew it. So, what did she do next? She ran straight to mom. A little while later, my mom showed up at my door, demanding I take down all my posts. I stood firm and told her no, adding, "Looks like I've got material for one more post now." That sent her off in tears. Later, I had a blunt phone conversation with both my parents. I told them their years of enabling my sister were what created the dysfunctional dynamic we'd all been stuck in. I made it crystal clear that I would never go back to being treated like I was before. If they still held on to any hope of that, I snuffed it out for good during that call. IT must have hit a nerve, because my parents finally told my sister to stop blaming me and to leave me alone. They admitted they couldn't handle the stress of my retaliation anymore. Of course, my sister threw herself a full-blown, "nobody loves me" pity party. My parents had to give her a reality check, snapping her out of it. As for my brother-in-law, he hasn't called me, and I'm pretty sure he's staying neutral in all this. But honestly, this can't be easy for him, either in his marriage or in his connection with me. Out of respect for him, I'll just say, "Sorry, man, but your wife pushed me too far." At this point, my parents are insisting my sister get counseling. They told her she needs to woman up because she can't keep juggling motherhood and clinging to the habits of her old life. Whether or not she actually follows through, who knows? I'm really hoping this is my last post on the matter. Hear that? Sis, if you don't stop treating me like your personal servant, babysitter, watchdog, or whatever else you think I should be, and if you keep acting like the whole world is out to get you because you can't control me anymore, then we can't have a relationship. That's the truth. But if you're willing to move past this nonsense and actually treat me like a decent human being, maybe we can get along again. Don't give me a reason to write anything else. Capiche? My parents and I had a long, heartfelt talk recently. They apologized for their role in all of this, and we've decided it's best to keep a bit of distance until Thanksgiving. Last night, I also had a man-to-man conversation with my brother-in-law over some cold beers. He told me he's given my sister an ultimatum. She needs to go to counseling, or he's going to separate from her. They're already in the process of finding her a counselor. He also shared some interesting insights. While he acknowledged my sister had been awful to me, he said she's been a very loving and caring wife to him. He admitted that a lot of her issues stem from the fact that she liked being an only child and never fully dealt with the resentment she felt when I came along as her younger sibling. My sister has finally agreed she needs help and will start counseling as soon as they get everything set up. On top of that, they've hired a qualified babysitter for my nephews, so that's no longer going to be my problem. My brother-in-law also owned up to the fact that he was angry with me at points during all this, but admitted that he should have stepped in sooner to help me. We both agreed that the whole situation had spiraled into something awful, but it's time to lay it to rest and move forward. One final note. These posts brought an unexpected bonus. They've gotten me a girlfriend. The girl I've been interested in for a while had a feeling it was me when she read the posts. She was just waiting for me to make a move. We've got our first date tonight, and I couldn't be more excited. Thanks to everyone here for your incredible support. I genuinely needed it, and it helped me navigate such a difficult time in my life.